Hey there, I'm Valerie Knowles from Knowles Produce, and today I'm going to tell you how to grow tomatoes. So this is a tomato plant. It's got kind of hairy leaves and they get pretty darn tall. So the first thing you want to do when you decide you're going to grow tomatoes is pick out a spot in your yard. It needs to be outside, it needs to be when it's warm, and it needs to be someplace with a lot of sun. Other things to consider when you're choosing a place to grow your tomato plants is it needs to be fairly large. Your tomato plants can get upwards of 6 feet tall, so make sure you've got plenty of vertical clearance to accommodate something that big, and they will probably get, 2 feet wide or so. So make sure you've got plenty of space for this tomato plant. You also want to make sure that you've got access to water. Now maybe you've got a hose close by, or maybe you need to make a little bit further plans and attach a couple hoses together so you can get water over there easily, or maybe you just need to make sure you've got a watering can or a 5-gallon bucket to work with. That's fine. Now you notice I did not say that you have to have a spot in your yard, right? You can use a pot to grow your tomato plant. It just has to be a pretty darn big pot with some holes in the bottom. All right, so you got that? You got your space figured out for your tomato plant. Now when you're ready to plant your tomato plant, if you're growing it in a pot, get some good quality potting soil. If you're going to be using your soil in your backyard or in your garden plot, you want to make sure that it's not Virginia clay, right? Work in some garden soil or some cow manure to make that darker in color and more nutrient rich. So once you get your area prepped, it needs to be relatively easy to work. A lot of people in Virginia are choosing to do raised beds where they're putting a little bit of a wall, maybe 1.5 feet tall, probably around there, and filling it with good soil and going above the Virginia clay instead of trying to mix into the Virginia clay. That is just fine, whatever works for you. So now you've got your space picked out to grow your tomato plant. It's got lots of sun, it's got access to water, and it's got some good soil. You're going to dig your hole for your tomato plant, and then you're going to put some starter fertilizer in the bottom of that hole. Some things to look for when you're choosing a starter fertilizer. We like Biotone Starter Plus, but you can use any starter fertilizer that you feel comfortable with. I like to look for ones that are organic so that I know I'm raising my tomato without conventional pesticides or any chemicals that might not be so great to consume. So I choose something organic. You choose whatever's best for you and your family. Like I said, I like Espoma Biotone Starter Plus. I'm really happy with that. And it has lots of beneficial microbes in it that encourage rapid root growth. So use as directed. That Starter Plus, you just use about a palmful of it right down in the bottom of that hole if you were planting a tomato of this size. If you've got a smaller tomato plant, maybe about 1/2 to 1/3 of a palmful of that Starter Plus. So you put some starter plant food down in that hole. Then you're going to take your tomato plant out of the plastic container and then put that soil right down in that hole that you've dug. With tomato plants, you can plant them deep. So this tomato plant here is, I don't know, I'm challenged, but that's maybe, 1 foot tall, 15 inches tall. You can plant this upwards of 3 inches deep. You pinch off those bottom stems and you just plant it just a little deeper than the soil line. Like I said, about 3 inches, up to 3 inches. And all along that stem, you're going to have roots that grow out that'll really give your tomatoes a strong foundation. Now, you can't do that with grafted tomatoes, and that's a whole other video. But if your tomato plant is labeled grafted, you don't do that with it. Most tomato plants are not grafted, and grafted tomatoes are very, very clearly marked. So when in doubt, assume not grafted and that you can plant it deep. So you can go about 3 inches deep. You're then going to pile your soil back up around the base of the plant and give it a good mush, right? Give it a little pressure to pat that soil down to give it, just a firm foundation. You don't want one little gust of wind to blow over your tomato plant. You water it and then you've planted it. That's it. For today anyway, that's it. Here's what you're going to do ongoing for it to take good care of it. Number one, it needs a metal cage or some sort of system with stakes in the ground and string between the stakes to hold the tomato plant up. Particularly once you start to get some green tomatoes on your tomato plant, it gets quite wobbly. So you need a structure to hold your tomato plant in place. Tomato cages work very nicely for this, or you can just put some stakes in the ground and run string from each stake to and fro on both sides of the tomato plant to kind of mash it into place and hold it upright for you. You don't want one gust of wind to take down your prized tomatoes. So get some stakes for it so it can be upright. You can start staking your tomato plant or put a cage around it right at the time that you plant it, or when it's about 18 inches tall or so. Once it gets to about 1.5 feet, if you're doing the method of stakes on the ground and string between the stakes, you'll want to start running that string in between the stakes when it's about 18 inches tall. After that, you're going to feed it at least once a month with some sort of plant food. Tomatoes are heavy feeders and they need lots of nutrients so that they can produce those big juicy tomatoes that you're looking for. I like, from that same company that did the Biotone Starter Plus, I like Tomato Tone or Garden Tone. Again, it's organic, it's pet friendly, it's kid friendly, it's easy to use, but there are lots of different plant foods on the market that would work for you and your family. Just use as directed. Many people don't feed their tomato plants enough. There's a lot of problems that people might get with tomato plants, and oftentimes it's from not enough nutrients. So make sure you feed it. As far as water goes, if it's in a pot, plan on watering it every day. If it's in the ground, probably twice a week or so, depending on what the weather is. If we get a real hot stretch, you might have to do a little bit more than twice a week. So very simple, just give it a good drink of water. If you can keep the weeds down from around it, that's even better. The weeds steal a lot of those nutrients and a lot of that water that your tomato plant really needs to grow big and healthy, right? So then you just hope that there's lots of sun and lots of nice hot days. Tomato plants really, really thrive on those hot days. It's going to grow and grow and grow. You'll see it get some nice little yellow flowers on it, and then you'll see some green tomatoes. They're going to get a little bigger, a little bigger, a little bigger, until they're time to pick. That green tomato will turn red. Now you can pick your tomatoes green if you like fried green tomatoes, or if you want them to ripen indoors. Some people choose to do that. I just really like to let them ripen right on the vine. Some people might bring them inside when they have a bit of green to them, because they found that when they are really, really red, that they attract small mammals like rabbits and squirrels, or birds. When they turn really red, they can see them well, and they might poke little holes in it and get a little snack for themselves. Other than that, that's all you need to do. Once your tomato plants stop bearing tomatoes, or if they start to get brown leaves, it often happens in sometime around the beginning of August. That's it. It's time to let it go. You pull it up and you put it in your compost pile, and you do this again next year. Really, really seasoned tomato plant growers will actually plant a second batch of tomatoes about 6 weeks after their initial batch, so that once that initial batch kind of has shown its age and has given all the tomatoes you're going to get from it, they have a whole second crop that's coming right along that'll take them into August, right? If you have any other questions, come right on into the garden center and we will help you with whatever you need. But I think that is a really good start for you to grow your own tomato plants right at home. Thanks, and we will see you soon. Bye.